Welcome to Financial Planning Explained. I'm your host, Mike Menninger, certified financial planner, owner and founder of Menninger and Associates Financial Planning. For those of you who have been following me, at least on video, you can see that I got new chairs. The old chairs are like really high. Now I can lean on the desk. It's actually pretty cool. But be that as it may, that's not why I'm here today. I'm here today because I got Andrew Mirolli, who is the co-founder of BuyAUM. And when I spoke to Andrew a few weeks ago, he presented an opportunity to discuss on the podcast, what do you do as a client if your financial advisor either retires, is about to retire, or unfortunately passes away suddenly? What do you do? So anyway, Andrew, thank you very much for joining. Thank you for reaching out to me, because this is a terrific topic that we think about here as advisors ourselves. So Andrew, thank you for joining me today.
I appreciate it, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here, and hello to all your listeners. I think the goal of this conversation is how do we bring peace and clarity to the chaos that happens when you get an email, the proverbial bus hits your advisor, or in fact, you're interviewing a new advisor that is 60, 62 plus, as most advisors are these days. Do they have a plan in place? So this is a conversation that hopefully will be around clarity and give folks some ammunition to say, I'm better equipped for that.
That's great, because, I saw a statistic not that long ago that the median age, which is the middle person, is 62 years old as an advisor, which means 50% of advisors are over 62 years old, which means that, and there is discussion of what's going to happen in the industry as all these advisors leave. And, that actually works out very well for you, because what you do is you're a matchmaker. You're a matchmaker to the advisor who's selling to an advisor who may be purchasing, to be able to, do that. But the purpose of this episode predominantly is to provide the framework and, what does the client do? The client may have been working with me for the last 20 years. Once I'm gone, now what? So that's going to be the framework of this episode, and I'm really looking forward to it. So tell me more about yourself and your background, Andrew.
Yeah. So Mike, I spent about a decade in capital raise. And so I was working for oil and gas, private equity, venture, direct real estate investments, Reg Ds, right? Non-traded stuff. And I'm the son of an Air Force pilot turned financial advisor at 40. And I watched him build the business and kind of grow up in it. And my first career was in wholesaling. And so I was on a sales desk and then an external wholesaler, working and serving financial advisors. And past the advisors, the families, right? So you talk about the median age of advisors at 62. Like, think past just the advisor. How many families have an advisor that is going to be retiring in the next 10 years? It's a ton. And so the whole point of BuyAUM is to have a material shift in how succession planning is done. It's not Zillow or Redfin where we just create a listing and blast it to everyone. It's very much, as you said, financial matchmaking. So that's the background. I absolutely love what I do. Been doing this for the last 3 years of working with advisors, helping walk hand in hand with them. And for the purpose of this conversation, I've seen a lot of things go well and a lot of things go poorly. And I think if we can bestow some tips and tricks, for lack of a better term, to the end client of how to maybe spurn their advisor to think about these things, or really even have a succession plan for their own household if the proverbial bus hits them and not their advisor, does their spouse or partner have a plan in place? So yeah, let's get into it.
That's cool. You know what? You said a lot. Do you have an idea what the percentage of advisors are that are supposed to? Probably 50% of advisors are going to be retiring within the next 10 years. Would you agree?
It's about 1 out of every 2.
Yep.
I've also seen a stat of it's $10 trillion worth of household money. Any way you slice it, it's a lot.
So for what it's worth, and I've got a few stories of my own, is I took over for 2 different advisors who had retired. One bigger, one was much, much smaller. One of the things that I can say is what's imperative for any time there's a transition is philosophy and style as to how they handle clients. And interestingly enough, and it's actually a pretty good one, is the larger of the two financial advisors who's retiring was probably in the seventh or eighth inning of doing a transition to another buyer. And it turns out that that buyer was doing all kinds of bait and switch. And he went back and said, look, this is a problem, canceled the whole deal. And in retrospect, realized that it wasn't a good fit because the way that gentleman handled clients was not the way he handled clients. And when we met, he was relieved because of the fact that we saw eye to eye on how we handle clients. And, there's a lot to be said about that because, I portray a personality. We have a certain way of doing things with our clients. If I bring in another person to take over my book of business and they do things differently, well, that's a problem. People are with us because of how we do things. You transition to somebody else who does it completely differently. Well, you as the end user client is going to like, well, what gives here? So there's that component of it. And I also remember I was in 2013 when I hired my first employee. And I remember vividly, and I told maybe about 6 or 8 of my clients, hey, guess what? I hired John and, he's going to help me do this, that, and the other thing. And if for some reason I get hit by the proverbial bus, now we've got somebody to be able to take it over. To the T, every single person said to me, even though I was under 50, I was in my 40s at the time, pushing 50, every single client said to me, I always wondered that. And therefore, that sent a big message to me. How many clients are out there thinking what happens to my advisor? Probably a lot more than advisors think.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's for every one question that the advisor gets, there's a dozen more that are thinking it. Because we get it, right? It's the father time is undefeated, as they say. And so it's an important question to ask. Back to your point of alignment, when we speak with advisors, we always ask them, what's your most important thing in this transition? And from a sales end, you'd think, oh, they want top dollar. It's never top dollar. It's always the money's not really important. It's got to be an investment philosophy fit and client care. And, we're doing a deal right now with an advisor who's 63 and she's got, a solid book and she's looking at a buyer and they've got, deep pockets, and it is all about how are they going to treat my clients. And she's interviewing this buyer, not as herself, but as her top clients or as this client. And so I think that is a positive, is that in all the advisors that we work with that are looking to transition their business, some clients might think they're just out for top dollar. 9.5 out of 10 of them are like, it's got to be the right fit, personality and service, and then investment philosophy for my clients. So I think it's really important. It's also an awkward conversation to have with your advisor as a client. Like, how do you bring up, hey, Steven, what's going to happen if you die? Like, who's next? And so I think that can be a challenging conversation to have because you're not looking to change advisors. You're not trying to blow up the relationship. You're just genuinely concerned. Hey, you're 64 years old. You're doing a great job. What happens? Have you had any clients that have asked you that? And if they had, what's your answer? What plan do you have in place, Mike?
Me personally, it's
Yeah.
interesting because we have a business succession plan in place.
Okay.
And, we established this in 2021. So that's a little over 4 years ago. And interestingly enough, when we have prospects come into the office, because we get a lot of unsolicited leads and calls through our website and just calling in and asking to meet. And we have an intro meeting. And every single time I have an intro meeting, number one, how I handle it. And I've built my business model is a little bit different, probably very different than most business models out there. Okay. I'm 61 years old. My oldest advisor is 28, with one exception. So all of my advisors are young. Now, that's a good and that's bad. But what I do every single time I meet with a new prospect, I sit down with them. I have one of my younger advisors with me and pretty much walk them through all the different things about us as a firm, how we handle our clients, how we do all these different things. But what I also do is I point to the person sitting next to me and I say, this is the gentleman who's going to be working with you on a daily basis. Okay, my role is to provide a second set of eyes, to provide the experience, to provide the oversight, and to work together with him. But the reality of it is that, I'm 61 years old. I'm not disappointed to admit it, but I am. Okay. And the reality of the situation is that, there's two ways of leaving the business, I always like to say, voluntarily and involuntarily. Involuntarily is that proverbial bus. All right, guys, I'm choosing the voluntary route. But the reality of it is that I say, if I decide to retire in 10 years, what's going to happen is that you'll have a 10-year relationship with this guy. And as a result, the transition out of losing me is going to be substantially less. Furthermore, my business succession plan is slowly passing my shares down to the younger advisors and taking the time to train them in not only how to be an advisor, but to train them in how to run a business and all that, so that if in fact I am hit by the proverbial bus or choose to leave, that they know how to continue carrying the torch in my absence.
Yeah, I mean, that's the right way to think about it. And the true statement is that when a succession or transition takes place, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, the client's money doesn't disappear. It's not like poof, it's gone and I'm what what can change though is the accountability, the service, and the communication style that clients have gotten comfortable with. So an in-house succession plan, I think, is the smoothest because it gives folks years to go, okay, well, I've got two faces on the screen, and then Mike eventually is going to not be on the screen, but I've gotten comfortable with his number two or his ensemble approach. But again, it's not like the money disappears when a succession happens. It's the trust, accountability, and communication that could change, or the investment thesis that could change. So those are the things to keep in mind. And whether it's, hey, Mike, I'm not looking to make any changes. I just want to understand what your continuity plan is because I don't want my family to be left out in the cold or, exposed if life happens to you. Would you walk me through what you have in place? Like that's it. I think it's empowering for a client to be able to have that conversation and open it up with, look, I'm not unhappy. I'm not trying to make a change, but you teach me to assess risk and like have a rainy day fund and 529s and all of these things that you've done great for me. I also have to make sure that if something happened to you, that my family's not exposed. Could you walk me through the continuity plan that you have in place? And if you don't, could you work on getting one?
So I don't know. Do you know the statistic? How many advisors out there are solo practitioners? Or what's the percentage?
I don't know the percentage off the top of my head. If there's 450,000 registered investment advisors in the US, it's probably close to 80 or 90,000 that are solo independent. Now, does that mean that they're a one-man band? Not necessarily, but it's a lot. Let's go back to the $10 trillion number of assets. It's got to be $2 to $4 trillion of that are solo operators, independent advisors. So again, if we click into how many families are, it's tens of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of families that have one point person as their advisor. And so it's kind of the unspoken about thing. It's harder to get a plumber. It's harder to get a CPA or an electrician. Everybody, those are jobs that people are retiring from. The same is true in the advisor landscape. What's the solution? I think it's a lot of folks in my generation that get into the business, find someone like you, Mike, that they can be trained under and learn the ropes of the business. And then two, it's a thoughtful transition. It's not a marketplace. I'm not trying to get the highest bid. The advisor, am saying my clients have, and we were talking with an advisor the other day, and he's got probably 60 households, net worth of 2 to 3 million apiece. So he's got a decent practice, no assistant, no staff. It's just him. Great lifestyle business, right? I'm not knocking that. Terrific for him. And he's like, I've thought about this, but I could just kind of keep working. It's kind of on autopilot. My clients trust me. And I challenged him, let's call him John. And I said, John, you've worked with 60 families, and he was at a bank channel before that, broke away from the bank, and these folks followed him. I said, John, you owe it to the families that have followed you to put thoughtful effort into who's going to take it. Yes, you could just run it till the wheels fall off. You die, they find somebody else. They call the 1-800 Schwab number and find me a new advisor. But it's like first impressions last and last impressions last. And so what is the last impression your clients are going to have of the relationship that if you do great for them investment wise and you leave them out to dry, it's not the legacy that people want to write for themselves.
Very interesting. I like that first and last impression. Andrew, this is a great opportunity for us to take a short break, so stay tuned. We'll be back with you in just a few moments.
Do you keep up regularly with your investments? Where exactly are your hard-earned dollars going? Are you financially prepared for an emergency?
I'm Mike Menninger, founder of Menninger and Associates Financial Planning. We believe that education and knowledge are powerful, and we want our clients to understand why we are making the recommendations that we make. It's your money, and you deserve to know where it's going, because it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. So call us today to discuss your financial concerns. Welcome back to Financial Planning Explained, and I'm still here with Andrew Mirolli. This is absolutely a terrific discussion that we're having today with regards to business succession planning for an advisor, and more so from the continuity associated with the client. Okay, and I'd love to obviously pick up, but what would you recommend that clients look for, either if they're looking for a new advisor, or in most cases, they're in transition? If they have an existing advisor, what should they be looking for or asking? And you left off with, the one advisor who has 60 households and how he doesn't want people to remember him for what happens if he dies. But it's important for me to understand, for people to think of me in a favorable manner. But to be honest with you, a lot of the purpose of my business succession plan is to protect the client. Because as I pointed out, every single one of my clients has another advisor working with them that I take the opportunity to introduce them, because it gives the ability for them to establish the relationship. I always said, right, wrong, or indifferent, the value of my business increases the more I am not needed.
Yeah.
As strange as that may sound. But talk to us about some of the things that the client should be looking for.
So we've put together a continuity scorecard that you can kind of ask yourself in rank order. 0, I have no idea. 1, I have somewhat idea. 2, it's very clear to me. And so I think will be in the show notes, but it's about understanding, is there chaos that happens if this transition happens, or is there a plan? One of the exercises that we do, so we run our service is completely free to selling advisors or sunsetter advisors. And it allows us to be super conversational with them and just walk them through these different exercises. And one of the exercises is we say, Mike, if you were locked in a room for 60 or 90 days and you couldn't touch your business, no one could reach you, what would break first? Is it you've got 60 option positions on and those would all expire? Is it, so as the advisor, if you or someone listening, that's a good thing to pressure test. If I was locked in a room, what would break first in my business? From the client's perspective, I think let's run that same example and say, if I couldn't reach my advisor for 90 days. Where's my confidence level in that my money would continue to grow or the plan would be in place? And so some of the questions is my investment persona, my investment preferences, is it documented? Is that in a CRM somewhere? Have we done a financial plan for me of, all the accounts that we have for me and my family and what our goals are? Like, first step is it documented, right? The second would be like, who is responsible for service, day-to-day stuff if I can't reach you? If you get hit by a bus, you go into a coma, whatever that is, right? God forbid that happens. But if it does, Mr. and Mrs. Advisor, who should I reach out to? And those are some of the questions that the solo advisor, it's not bad. I think a solo advisor can bring a lot of intentionality and effort and focus to their client base. It becomes more of a niche practice. I love working with business owners. I'm a super in-depth planner, whatever. So I'm by no means am I knocking the independent advisor. It's one of my favorite advisors to work with. The downside, the blind spot, the hole in that plan is if you're locked in a room for 90 days, who do I reach out to? Who is exiting positions? Things like that. So it's something to keep in mind. The ensemble approach I really like because it takes that risk away, kind of like what you have going, Mike, is like you've got a team. If you weren't reachable, they can be spoken to or reached. But then the other question is, how much of your business, Mike, lives in your head? What are your, get out of Dodge, indicators or signs and the market's falling, or what's your meeting cadence? Like, I think the biggest thing that eliminates chaos is documentation, right? Documentation brings clarity from the chaos. So I think it's asking your advisor, look, who's going to be responsible for the day to day if you can't be reached or in this transition? What's going to change in this transition? Is my fees going to change? Are my fees going to change? Is my custodian going to change? What paperwork should I expect? Should I expect the same meeting cadence? How long will you be involved in this transition? Those are all things to keep in mind. We had one advisor that was one of the negative scenarios that I mentioned at the top. Older gentleman, early mid 70s, smaller book, had a tax practice as well, wanted to sell the advisory firm. Had some health stuff and wanted to travel with his wife while he could. All the good reasons, right? And he said, I want to do a 100-day transition plan. I want to sell, transition all the clients, and get fully compensated out in 100 days.
100 days.
It did not go well, right? About 50 to 60% of the clients said, I'm going to find somebody else, right?
I can see that.
You're running out on me. You're leaving me high and dry. It's that last impression. And so it's the wade into the pool is the better approach than I'm going to wait and then jump in all at once. A lot of folks we work with, we say, yeah, I'm probably like 3 to 5 years out from wanting to be retired. I'm 62. I want to be done by 67. Okay, cool. Does that mean at 66 and a half, you find a successor and you sell the book and then it's like the longer that you take care of your clients and you can transition those notes in the CRM, the investment profiles, the cadence. One advisor said, we always send chocolates. That's here in Atlanta. We always send there's this great chocolatier shop and our clients love those, right? A successor, that's the kind of intangible information that just keeps everybody happy, right? There hasn't been this chaos and change. And so asking your advisor, what happens if you can't be reached? Who's responsible for the day to day? Okay, great. You're changing. You found this new firm, hopefully with intention. How long are you going to stay involved? Can I still call you? What's going to change from a fee perspective? Are they going to force me into different products? Mike, I really like that you are small cap focused or you bring insurance into the business, whatever the advisor's preference is or why clients are with them. Is that going to remain the same? It should be an open and honest conversation because when it's not, it just turns into like a throwaway comment after a client meeting, but they've really been thinking about it for a long time. Hey, Mike, how long are you going to be doing this for? hey, Mike, you're getting a little, I'm not saying you're old, but like, how it's those,
Hey, watch it now.
bring this up, right? It's like, if we can just sit down and go, hey, man, I get it. You're 64. You've done great for me. I'm not trying to change anything. What's the plan? It doesn't have to be this like, hey, by the way, what's going to happen? That tells you. And if you're a client and you haven't had that discussion, and maybe haven't had the opportunity to bring it up, or didn't want to have the awkward, hey, you're getting a little gray in the hair, what happens? Um, I'd encourage you to just have the conversation and frame it as, look, you've done great for me. I'm not trying to make a change. I just want to make sure that my family isn't exposed if something happens.
Right. And by the way, just for your own edification, my hair is not turning gray. It's turning scalp color.
Yes, yes, that is. I'm not sure which one's better.
I'd rather be, that's what a gentleman said to me. He says, yeah, I got a little snow on the roof. I said, well, let me tell you something, Rob. It's a lot better to have snow on the roof than be missing some shingles.
Yes. I love that.
It's one of the things that you brought up earlier, which I thought was pretty cool, is that you said what happens if the advisors, and I'm looking at it from our perspective and not as much the client's perspective. You said, what happens if the advisors away for 30, 60, or 90 days? It's kind of interesting. It's a two-part question kind of, or comment. That was something we talked about here.
Yeah.
They said, I should disappear. No phone, no nothing for a couple weeks to test drive. How does everybody step up? How do they fill in the shoes? And who steps up?
Yeah.
But it's also stress testing the business, because if all of a sudden I step away and, I want to do this, the problem is, what the hardest thing about me stepping away for 2 weeks? Me letting go.
Yes.
Okay. But be that as it may. So what that would do is actually, it would be a good stress test to be able to identify, oh my God, Mike was gone for 2 weeks or 30 days. Wow, we found a weakness here. We found a weakness here, which is actually a good process to do. It's just like I said, the hardest thing to do is to get me to go away for a weekend is hard enough to do. But that would really test the system. And then the other thing too, that I think would dramatically improve is having good systems in place, good systems and processes, because like I always said, I'm ready to leave when the business can run without me. And it's not as if the business couldn't run without me. I still got time to enable the business to run without me, and for my clients to understand that they don't need me. Okay. And that requires putting your ego under the desk and squashing it. That's how you build it.
No, it's a very important point. It's also applicable to any type of business out there, any family for that matter. What if the person that's in charge of finances, husband, wife, man, female, whatever it is, what if they disappear? Where are the accounts? Where's the money? What's the logins? Like, it's something that we should stress test in all aspects of our life. I'm a certified CEPA, which is a fancy way of saying a certified exit planning advisor. And it's a certification that we help business owners exit their business. BuyAUM, we focus specifically on financial advisors, right? But CEPAs are in all kinds of stuff. And we talk about in the CEPA kind of lexicon of, is it a lifestyle practice or is there enterprise value in it? And the biggest difference is, are there documented systems? I was speaking with a gentleman, not an advisor. He's from my old private equity days, is running a search fund. And he's like, hey, do you know any businesses that people are selling? I'm like, well, it's not really in your sphere. These are all advisory practices. You need licenses. And I was asking them, I'm like, look, the thing in M&A is everybody's looking for EBITDA of 2 to 3 million or above and top line revenue of 5 million and above. That's like, I want to buy that business, whether it's manufacturing or roofing. And I asked him, and I said, why is that like the line in the sand? Why not go over, the Moneyball approach and pick up a bunch of smaller businesses? And he said, it's because it's founder dependent. I don't want to buy a business that's a job. And at those numbers, 5 million in rev and 2 to 3 million in EBITDA, there's the assumption that it's not super founder dependent. So how does that apply to an advisor? Yes, I'll step away that when the business can run on its own. It will not get there by itself. And so we ask folks, like, how much of your business processes, your investment thesis is in your head and how much is documented? A lot of folks, it's in their head. I know the meeting cadence. Last time I spoke with this person, what we send them for their Christmas or birthday present, how they like to invest. It's all in my head. Okay, well, that is a massive risk, right? For the business owner and the client. And so that's another, what can an advisor, what can a client ask their advisor in that conversation is going, I don't necessarily need to see my medical chart, but I like to know that I've got a chart when I go to the doctor. It's like, Mr. or Mrs. Advisor, can you confirm that my investment thesis and risk profile, my goals for my family is documented somewhere that if someone was to have to come in and take over the business, I wouldn't be starting from scratch.
That's all good stuff. Andrew, we're actually out of time. What I think I'd like to do is another episode with you to switch sides and talk about what it's like from your perspective, but then talking to advisors. So sounds like a great opportunity to make it 2 episodes. Episode number 1 is client-centric. Episode number 2, we could talk about various types of business exit planning. That's your CEPA, a certified exit planning advisor.
Yes, sir.
Good effort.
You nailed it.
So, Andrew, thank you very much. That was very insightful. And more importantly, I hope it was insightful for the viewers. And so for those of you who took the time today to meet with me and Andrew, thank you very much. And I hope you have a wonderful day and a good rest of your next week. Thank you.